In the last couple of movies, we created a class and gave it some very simple functionality, but we haven't seen how to actually use our class or its functionality. In order to do that, we're going to need to talk about how to instantiate a class. Now, that may be a word that's not very familiar to you if you haven't worked with object-oriented programming before. But what we're going to be doing is creating an instance of the class, and that's why we say instantiating. It's a fancy way of saying we're creating an instance of the class. Think of a class as a pad of stationery, or let's say maybe one of those while you were out pads, where you take messages for someone who's gone, and it has a space for the first name and the last name of the person who called and their phone number, the time they called, all of that. So think about a little pad like that that's sort of pre-printed with all this information. That's going to be our class, is that pad of paper. And what we're going to do with each instance is tear off one of those sheets and fill it out. Each instance is like another page. So every instance is different from each other because they've been filled out with different information, but they fundamentally are the same. They're all a while you were out note. And that's different from, let's say, a doctor's prescription pad. That's a different class, and it has different fill-in-the-blanks on it for filling out a prescription. And each of those will be very similar to each other. They'll all be of the same class, but they'll be different from our while you were out notes. So what we're going to be working on now is how to sort of tear off one of those pages of stationery and fill it out with some more specific information. Let's see how to do that. I'm going to take my class example file. I'm just going to do another save as on it, just so that we still have a record of that work that we were just doing. I'm going to hit class example 3, and I'm just going to get rid of all of this at the bottom, but I'm going to leave the class that we've still been working with at the top as we continue to expand that. Now, in order to instantiate a class, what we do is we say new, and then person with parentheses. That creates a new person. Now it creates it, and then it does nothing with it. It just creates it, and it's not accessible to us anymore. So we need to assign it to a variable so that we can work with it. So person equals a new person object. So take the class person, tear me off one of those sheets, and I'm going to fill it out. Now, we don't have a place for first name or last name or anything like that yet. We'll get to that later. But what we've done is simply pull off one of those sheets from our memo pad and assign it to person. Now we can have another one. It could be person2 equals new person. Now these are two different instances of the same class, person. Make sure that you understand that. This is two different occurrences of the person. So I'm a person, you're a person, Steve's a person, Bob's a person, right? All of us have some things in common. We all have a first name and a last name. We all have 2 arms and 2 legs and so on. So we're all of the same class, but each one of us is a different instance, a different occurrence. And that's what we've got going on here. And we can find out what class an instance belongs to. For example, we can say echo get class and then person. And let's go ahead and, like we always do, just put a nice BR tag at the end of that. And that will return what class this instance of person is. Obviously, we've named it person, so it's very obvious. But if we'd called it Bob, or if we'd called it student, then it might not be clear that it's a person that we're talking about. It's a helpful way to make sure that we know what class we're talking about. And there's another way that we can do it as a Boolean, just like we've been doing with the others. We can say if is a, and then we can put in person and person. So if person is a person. It kind of reads weird and backwards. But what we're saying is if this instance, this person variable, is of the class person, then return true or false. And we can say echo, yup, it's a person. Or else echo, not a person. So that's the way we can test. We can find out what class it is, or we can test whether it is or not. Let's just try those two out real quick. We'll go into Firefox and we'll bring up class example 3. So it comes back and tells us it's of the class person, and then it says, yep, it's a person. Now if we were to make it a different class and say, is it of the class animal, even though animal's not defined, we come back here and nope, it says not a person, but obviously it's returning a Boolean false. So now you know how to create an instance. And once we have an instance, then we can activate the functionality that's inside of that object. So the way we do that, the way we can call our function that's in there, remember it's a method, the method say hello, is we simply say person and then an arrow. All right, I'm going to always call that an arrow, but it's the minus sign and the greater than, and then say hello with the parentheses after it, just like we do with our functions. It's still a function. We still need to have those parentheses to indicate it. All we're doing is saying, look inside the person, and in there, find the function called say hello. So that arrow notation we're going to get very familiar with. And you'll see that I don't need to do any kind of echo before it because the echo is already in my function. So let's just try that out real quick. We'll go back to Firefox and we'll just reload the page. Hello from inside a class. So now we've created a class, we've put a function in it, we've made an instance of the class, and we've called the functionality that's inside of it by using that arrow notation. So at its most fundamental, that's all there is to actually using classes. With just this much knowledge, you already could wrap up a lot of your functions, put them into classes and make them class methods, and call them using the notation that we have here. Now earlier, we talked about references and how references would play an important part of working with objects. And in the next movie, we're going to see how that's the case.